Radio Now 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.
Hello, I'm Emily Metheny, your host. As the weather starts to get nicer here in Indianapolis, I wanted to have a conversation about something that is very near and dear to me, and that's drowning prevention. Full disclosure, I'm a swim coach, and I've been a lifeguard for more than 10 years. So to have this conversation, I reached out to the National Drowning Prevention Alliance and spoke with Adam Katchmarchi, the organization's executive director. We talked about the different types of drowning, Hollywood and media's depictions of drowning, who is all involved in drowning prevention, and what layers of protection means, and how we can utilize them to stay safe. We start the conversation by talking about the organization.
The National Drowning Prevention Alliance, or NDPA, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our work is mainly focused in the United States. Our goal is to break down barriers as it relates to water safety and drowning prevention. A lot of the industries that have a vested interest in drowning prevention are from different sectors, such as public health, the Learn to Swim community, first responders. The list kind of goes on and on of, all the areas that touch water safety and drowning prevention. So our goal is to work in a multi-sectorial fashion, get these barriers broken down and get people sharing, while also bolstering local activities as it relates to water safety and drowning prevention. Our belief is, as the NDPA, is that drownings are prevented locally. So our goal from a national effort is to help better support these local efforts in drowning prevention, provide resources, and provide timely information.
And Adam, you kind of mentioned it, but what are some of the barriers to the drowning prevention?
Well, part of it, number one, is the fact that we all work in different areas, right? You have the pool and spa community. That's even broken down into commercial and residential pools. You have the public health folks who are working to prevent drowning from a public health perspective. We have the Learn to Swim community who is, actually teaching people a layer of protection, as we often say. The more layers of protection you use, the lower your drowning risk is, or the safer the environment is. So learning to swim is one of those layers of protection. The fencing industry. The fencing industry is a group we try to work with because barriers are important around water, especially backyard pools, even some open water environments. So our goal here is just to make sure people are working together, provide that platform, and even when there's disagreement in the community around drowning prevention and water safety, kind of give a place for that, kind of both sides to hear both, give a platform for both sides to present their arguments or their disagreements, and just better educate the community of ways that we can all work together. Because really that's what this all comes down to is, even it was the theme of our conference, the National Water Safety Conference last week, was this really takes a village. We all have to work together to prevent drowning. Our drowning numbers in the U.S. Really haven't changed in the last 20 years. We saw a big drop from 1980 to 2000, and from 2000 to 2020, our drowning rates have remained fairly steady, some going up in some local areas in the country, some going down, and they fluctuate on an annual basis. But to really reach this next level and to really make people safer around the water, we do all need to work together for that goal.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of touched on it, but what are some of the statistics surrounding drowning? Because I know it's one of the number one causes of drowning for children between the ages of 1 and 4.
It is the leading cause of unintentional injury-related death for children 1 to 4, but that's only part of the problem. Now, children 1 to 4 tend to get the most attention because of that statistic that you just mentioned, the leading cause of death, or for unintentional injury death in that age category. But drowning is a risk across the lifespan. In the U.S., we lose somewhere around 3,500 individuals every year fatally to drowning, and actually 2/3 of those victims are actually adults. One thing I'll mention here is the environment is a really important piece when we look at statistics, because as you age and as you recreate differently throughout your lifetime, your drowning risk changes based on that environment, where our 1 to 4-year-olds in most cases are drowning in backyard pool environments, where our older adults, our teenagers, especially males, young males, are drowning in open water environments during the summer. And, actually not just during the summer, all year round, because even if you go out in, some of our northern areas in the country into a frozen lake, something like that, and fall through, that would be counted as a drowning statistic. And part of this is making sure people are making smart choices and really thinking about safety preemptively before they get themselves into a dangerous situation. As we often say, drownings are preventable. These are preventable accidents. It just takes that extra kind of thought ahead of time to think about making those safety-minded choices. And one other thing that I think is, really important to mention here is we often talk a lot about the fatal side of drowning. What we don't talk a lot about is the non-fatal side. So the World Health Organization and the CDC have two classifications, fatal drowning and non-fatal drowning. Non-fatal drowning is a really big bucket because that could be someone who experienced a drowning, was rescued, pulled to the side, and was totally fine. Non-fatal drownings also include individuals who have been seen in an emergency department for a non-fatal submersion incident. Now, everyone thinks, it's a non-fatal, so it's not as bad. Well, drowning is a hypoxic incident, and meaning that the brain isn't getting oxygen, and neurocells don't regenerate that well. So someone who's been underwater for a significant amount of time, even though they may get their body back, there may be significant neurological damage. And there have been studies to kind of estimate how large that non-fatal drowning number is. The best studies usually point to that for every one fatal drowning, there's another 4 or 5 or even more victims than that seen in an emergency department for a non-fatal submersion. And again, that's that basket of no morbidity, the victim was fine, they recovered just fine, or there's morbidity with their non-fatal drowning injuries. And that oftentimes is brain injury.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the act of drowning, we see in a lot of media that it's loud, it's splashing, and things like that. Can you kind of explain a little bit about how that's just kind of a misconception, because drowning isn't loud and isn't really like what we see in media?
Yeah, for sure. And really, we call it the Hollywood-style drowning, and movies and TV media really have done us a disservice by portraying drowning the way that they've portrayed it, where oftentimes you have a victim who is being able to call out for help, they're waving their arms, they're pointed towards rescue. And, there are certain victims who are able to call out for help, and we call those distressed swimmers. Those are swimmers who are still able to support themselves. They are in need of rescue, but they are not what we would refer to as an active drowning victim at that point. Once someone crosses the line into what's called the instinctive drowning response, that's that 20 to 60 second fight for survival. And this is where we have such a big misconception out there, because even a lot of parents think, if my child is in trouble, they'll call out for help. That 20 to 60 second fight for survival, most victims are not able to call out for help, even children, because their full effort is just on getting air, and they're oftentimes bobbing up and down in the water. The big thing here is to make sure this is where active supervision comes into play, because drownings happen quick, they're silently. And, one of the things, I work with a lot of families who have lost a child or a loved one to a drowning, and that group is called Families United to Prevent Drowning. The number one thing I hear from these families is, I didn't know. I didn't know drowning was the leading cause of death for children 1 to 4. I didn't know about the risk factors. I didn't know about, life jacket usage. I didn't know the proper safety steps. And most importantly, they didn't know how fast and how silent drowning was. And this is the thing, it's if, you miss that 20 to 60 second window, it's not, you're pulling the victim out and they're going to be okay. This is an emergency, at least an emergency department visit, if not worse. And, and really this is, again, just making sure people are aware of the statistics, making sure they're aware of the risk factors. Our goal is not to steer people away from enjoying the water. We just want them to do it as safe as possible.
And what are some ways that people can enjoy water safely? Like, what are some of these safety-minded choices that they could be using?
Yeah, we always focus this on, at least with my organization, the concepts of layers of protection. And that's using as many layers as possible, and these are safety layers, to make the environment as safe as possible. So an example in, a backyard pool environment would be having any door or window that leads out to the pool area, having an alarm on it, making sure that all people around the water are trained in swimming or have had swim lessons or survival lessons. making sure that there's quick access to the 911 system, so having a phone nearby, making sure someone is always actively supervising. That could be an adult, a responsible teenager. We often use the concepts of a water watcher, someone who they can even have a specialized tag that kind of signifies and reminds them that their responsibility is to watch the water. And that person who's responsible for supervising should not be distracted by a cell phone, the doorbell ringing, social media, a newspaper. Their job is to just keep the eyes on the water and make sure everyone is staying safe. Having proper barriers around pools, making sure there's fencing. What's the most important is isolation fencing. Just perimeter fences always don't keep someone away from your pool, or especially if it's a child inside your home. Having another fence specifically around your pool is really important as well. And then also for open water environments, making sure that you're very familiar when you're going to an area that's been designated as a safe area for your activity. So if that's swimming in open water, just making sure it's a designated swimming area, swimming near lifeguards, swimming near places where there's quick access to rescue. And then if you're going out boating or doing other recreational water activities, just making sure that you are with a group of people. You don't do it by yourself, making sure that you have a plan in place. You need to think through safety ahead of time. Even in the boating community, we refer to that as a float plan. And also making sure if you're going out boating, making sure that you're letting people know where you're going and what time you plan to return and to what location.
Excellent. And then as a parent or guardian, how can I talk with my young teenagers who have been through some lessons just to remind them to think through the safety aspect before they go out to the beach, before they go out on a boat with friends? How can I remind them?
Well, that is the hard question, but we do want to make sure you're having that conversation with any teenager or any child or even other adults, just making sure you're gently reminding them about water safety, making sure that they're taking proper safety procedures and not engaging in high-risk activities around the water, doing any activities that could lead towards injury, diving into water that you can't see the bottom, making sure that a life jacket is being worn in open water environments. One of the biggest misconceptions with open water is people think, well, it's just water is water. Well, we don't know exactly, what's lurking under the water. Is there debris under the water that you could hit your head on or get stuck on under the water? How deep is the water? The list kind of goes on and on, but it's making sure you have that important safety conversation. There's an important research study that actually came out of New Zealand and Australia a number of years ago that analyzed how middle schoolers approach water safety and where they learn their belief structure from around water safety. And what that research showed is our female students are more likely to turn towards mentors and leaders, parents, guardians, teachers, individuals like that to form their safety habits, where males are much more likely to turn to their same-age peers and follow their behavior. And that's where we know it needs to be a cultural shift with these young adults and making sure that they're just thinking through safety a little bit more. It's just like texting and driving, drinking and driving, any other activity we want our children to be safe doing. It's just providing that extra thought and making sure we're not taking on or doing anything that's going to lead us into a dangerous situation.
Excellent. And I know we've talked a little bit about the different sectors when you look at water safety and drowning prevention, like spas and pools and bathtubs. What else, what other safety tidbits can you give someone just around the household? If I don't have a pool at my house, I should still be concerned what my children or my friends may potentially be getting into. What are some other threats that someone might not think of?
Yeah, anywhere you have water in your household, you should be thinking water safety. Bath safety, especially for our infants and young toddlers, super, super important. Don't rely, that they're going to be okay in the tub. You cannot leave them there alone. They do need to be actively supervised at all times. And then you also want to think about other water features around your house. Do you have any ponds, anything, any standing water on your property, inside or outside your house that may be a risk for a child to access? If your child ever is missing, the first place you want to look is any water body on your property. Check there first. If a kid's hiding in a closet, they'll be okay. If they're in a body of water, they're likely not going to be okay. So you do need to check those water areas first if your child ever comes up missing. Some other just common safety tips around the house. Just think through all of those areas you may have risk. And one of the things that we're most concerned about, and again, this is not to turn people away from enjoying and recreating outdoors during the summer, but think about these, what we're referring to as portable pools, these pools that you can buy at like Walmart or Costco. They're great fun and great activities for your children during the summer, but they often don't have the same barrier requirements that physical structure pools do, such as your above-ground or in-ground pools that are more permanent in nature. It's really no different just because you bought this pool at Walmart or Costco, and because it doesn't have barrier requirements around it, it's still an open body of water now that's on your property that you need to be thinking through, can my kids access this body of water? And also, could other kids in the neighborhood access this body of water? So you do need to think about that. Even those, kiddie pools, the little plastic ones that you can buy at the store, make sure at the end of the day those are emptied. You don't leave any standing water in buckets, anything like that. Because again, especially with young infants, those little kids are very top-heavy, and they can easily fall into a bucket, fall into that body of water, and not have the upper body strength to right themselves. And again, no different than, an adult if they would, fall down, hit their head, become unconscious, and they're laying in water. All it takes is an inch of water to drown. So just making sure, again, we're not trying to steer people away from enjoying the water, recreating outdoors, just thinking through and making those easy, simple safety steps that could prevent a tragic accident from happening.
Mm-hmm. And then on your website, the National Drowning Prevention Alliance website, are there resources? Mm-hmm. What's all available on the website?
Oh, we have a ton. We actually, on ndpa.org, we just launched a new resource center this past year, which we're actually getting ready to expand in the month of May. We have over 1,000 resources. We link out to our partner organizations. We as an organization have over 500 members and over 100 different partner organizations around the country, some small, some large groups. But the number of resources available out there for drowning prevention, whether you're trying to educate your children, educate other adults, find statistics, find research around water safety and drowning prevention, if you're trying to come up with campaigns or a task force or coalition in your community, all the resources are right there on ndpa.org. And really what we're trying to do is make this as easy as possible for each community to address drowning prevention and water safety.
Mm-hmm. Because no matter where you are, there is water, and water safety is just that important.
Well, and one thing that I want to just kind of make sure gets thrown in here is drowning does not discriminate. I've worked with families who have come from the most wealthy, well-to-do backgrounds, and also families who have come from absolutely nothing. Drowning does not discriminate. Yes, there are specific communities in the country, specific areas that drowning is a bigger problem, especially in our Sunbelt states. In certain communities, the African-American community has been cited to have higher drowning rates along with Native American or Alaskan natives. But, the core essence here is just because of your socioeconomic status, your skin color, your cultural background, drowning does not discriminate. We have examples from each category. And making sure that each one of us takes those steps to prevent it, because, again, this is a fast accident, and once it happens, there's no do-overs. So making sure you're just taking those steps is really just so absolutely critical. I always say we never want to have another family experience the same loss as the other families that we work with, because, as I said, there are no do-overs when it comes to this.
And Adam, as we start to wrap up, if somebody within the community wants to start a coalition or start an initiative locally, or if I'm a parent, the best way to get in contact with you guys is on the website, correct?
Yeah, you can go to our website, go to the Contact Us page. You can fill out that form. You can reach out to us directly. Just email Adam, ADAM, at ndpa.org, or call 1-800-757-9270. and that's 1-800-757-9270, and we'll be happy to help you form a coalition, get more resources, and really just make this a priority in your local community. We're here to help for that.
Excellent. And as we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add about what your organization does or anything else?
The only thing I'll say is just, if you're listening to this interview and, you're thinking about ways in which you can, better protect your family, better protect your neighborhood, go to ndpa.org, get connected with others in your community. This truly takes a village, but drownings are so preventable, and we can prevent these tragic incidents from happening. But it does start at the local level, and it does take people in their own community and their own households making this a priority. And if we all do that, we will see these staggering statistics change.
Since COVID changed how a lot of people do recreation and are outside, what has the NDPA seen?
One of the things that we've noticed in our just initial look at the drowning statistics from 2020, which I have to say, this is not a full picture view. We have limited data available from certain states because drowning data does take a while to turn around. I've been constantly getting the question, what has COVID done to our drowning rates? What we are starting to see is higher incidents in some states, especially in the Sun Belt, of higher incidents of backyard pool drownings. But that's not to say that this trend isn't going to follow in other areas of the country. That's just where the data we have right now is. Because one of the things that we're so concerned about is more people are installing backyard pools in these water features because COVID has made us change the way that we recreate as human beings. If you were in a routine of going to a gym, you may have had to transition through COVID your recreating activities to an outdoor environment. And there's some research coming out of the fitness industry that's actually indicating that people who have changed the way they recreate may not return to recreating the way they did prior to COVID-19. So we are going to see more people using their backyards to recreate, using more open bodies of water to recreate, and we're all for that. We're all for people enjoying the water, but it's now so critical to make sure we are taking these safety steps to make sure people are safer around the water, because the biggest risk factor that we see is with more water environments, we have the potential for more accidents to occur. And this is it's a pinnacle time because we want to see our drowning rates drop, not go on the increase. And, COVID has presented us a lot of challenges, and it's not through yet. But again, it doesn't change our prevention steps, just making sure people think about adding as many layers of protection into whatever environment they're going to recreate in is going to make a huge impact.
Excellent. And those layers include putting up a fence around the water. It's using a life jacket properly. It's getting those swim lessons. It's all these different layers.
Yep, and making sure you're ready in an emergency situation. I will tell you one of the, because drowning is an accident. Drowning can happen. And if it happens, the best thing you can do for that victim is provide quick and efficient care. And one of those major things is CPR. And it's not hands-only CPR. For a drowning victim, they do need breath. So making sure that your family gets CPR trained and first aid trained, hugely, hugely important.
And is there any statistics with being able to start that first aid immediately as more advanced help is on the way?
There's no particular research studies I can point to, but I will give you an anecdotal example. Our marketing director for NDPA, Laura Metro, her son Clay experienced a non-fatal drowning incident, and what the doctors attribute his recovery to, and Clay is an amazing example of bystander CPR and the amazing effects that it can do when it started right away. Given Clay's accident, it was questionable if he would survive, and what all neurological damage would there be. And the doctors attribute his full recovery to very efficient bystander CPR being started right away. So it does help. And, we all need to think about, too, we all live in different areas of the country. What's beautiful about this country is there's so many different areas for us to enjoy, but that also leads to, if you're in a rural community, help can be delayed. It may take not, 5 or 10 minutes for EMS to arrive, but 15, 20, or 25 minutes for EMS to arrive. So making sure you're prepared to give that victim as high-level care, as efficient care as possible, really, really important. But also that speaks to the, different risk factors around the country. I mentioned and talked a lot about the Sunbelt states. But when you think about it, drowning is drowning, but there are so many different risk environments in different states. If you look at the state of like Minnesota with over 10,000 lakes, yes, it's still water, yes, it's still drowning, but the risk factors and the environment there is much different than it is in South Florida or where you're at in Indianapolis. So making sure that we all just kind of take an inventory of what environments we have access to, what safety steps we should think about, and just different ways to not just keep our family safe, but our community safe as well. I keep going back to this phrase, it takes a village, and this is all about community at the local level, but it really is pulling in all of the key stakeholders, your medical physicians, your first responders, your learn-to-swim folks, your aquatic operators, your public health folks, and the list goes on and on. Anyone who touches water safety or drowning prevention should be involved in that conversation at the local level.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Adam.
Not a problem, Emily. I'm always happy to spread the word about drowning prevention.
Thank you for joining me this week, and please join me again next week. If you want to reach out or you have topics you'd like me to cover, you can email me at emetheny, that's EMETHENY, at radio-one.com. Or you can hit me up on Twitter at EmilyDoesVideo. Until then, have a great week.
Radio Now 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.